Mark Sisson. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
So how the hell do you look so good at 70?
Well, first of all, thank you. I think partly genetics. I think, absolutely lifestyle. And that includes real attention to food over the last several decades. And then, working out. And I don't work out to beat myself up anymore. I work out to be healthy and fit.
Mm-hmm.
And we could have a whole discussion about the difference between being, performance fit and being healthy. When I was a performing, high-performance endurance athlete, I was wickedly fit, but I was not healthy.
And do you think that like work capacity that you've developed through that, though, allowed you to then be able to work out to be more healthy?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I had the luck of being early to the game in endurance, and similarly lucky to be out of the game of endurance early on. So I had a 10 or 20 year stretch of time where I was doing probably too much endurance work and not enough lifting. Recognized the folly of my ways, started lifting, stopped running so much, eventually stopped running at all, and focused more on life skills, life fitness, whether that lifting a little bit and stand-up paddling a little bit and riding a bike a little bit and playing ultimate frisbee and being fit enough and mobile and flexible enough to be able to do a wide range of activities competently, without focusing too much on one.
Yeah, I've ran a few endurance events, and it blew me away. The people that ran them, they were not, you would expect them to be skinny and good shape, but oftentimes at those half marathons or marathons, those people are overweight and they do not look healthy.
No, it's a weird phenomenon, and I have a new book coming out in September called Born to Walk.
Oh, awesome.
And
What a beautiful name.
The whole book, thank you. The whole book is about how inappropriately the running boom was over the last 50 years for most people. Like, most people should not be running.
Yeah.
They were either coerced into running by the medical establishment, or thought through all of the popular literature or through the shoes that were available that they should be running lots of miles, and that was supposedly good for their health and their heart and their weight loss journey. And in almost every case, that's not true. Running is not appropriately, it's not appropriate for most people who are more than, say, 15 or 20 pounds overweight. It's a horrible way to try to lose weight. It encourages the body to, especially the shoes, the thick shoes that everybody runs in today, it encourages bad form, so then you get injured, and then you feel bad about yourself because you're not running because you're injured. And anyway, I got a whole book on it coming out, but basically acknowledging your observation that the people who start most marathons, it might be 40,000 people that start the LA Marathon, and of that, 80% are overweight.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. And they're finishing in 4.5, 5.5, 6 hours. Dude, I ran 100 miles a week for 7 years. I was a career runner. I've never spent that much time running in my life. So I don't know how you can justify that amount of dedication, struggling, and suffering to something that isn't that good for you in the first place.
I know. It's quite absurd. And like, I like to, whenever I'm doing jogging or sprinting, I like to go to this park close to me and go barefoot.
Yeah.
And it's so funny how our body has these built-in limits.
Yeah.
And your feet start to hurt if you're running multiple miles barefoot. And when you bypass that through the shoe, and you allow for, because when I was like running like a half marathon, for example, and I was seeing these people, their form wouldn't work barefoot. It's just because they have these shoes that they're able to get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the metrics we use is that you should only run with good form, and good form means not heel striking in most cases. It means landing on the midfoot. It means wearing minimalist shoes, because it is your feet, your calves, your Achilles that should tell you it's time to stop running.
Yeah.
And when you bypass that information and you put on thick cushioned shoes, then you're pounding your hips more than they should. You're working your heart more than it probably wants to work. I mean, there's a lot of residual side effects to these thick shoes that people haven't really thought through. Whereas if you're running barefoot, which is the ideal way to run, typically you can't put that many miles in. It's,
Yeah.
Again, your feet say, nope, that's enough running for now.
Exactly. And Born to Walk, like I said before, it's such a beautiful title. It's one of my favorite books I've read, Born to Run.
Yeah.
Have you read that book?
Oh my God, the whole premise of my book is to build upon Chris McDougall's thesis, that is, we were born to run, but also tear apart the science behind it a little bit, that we were born to be able to run. We're not born to run metronomically 7.5-minute miles every day for years and years. Our ancestors walked a lot and sprinted a little bit. So I say we're born to walk, we're born to sprint, and we're born to be able to run as a result of all the walking we do and all the sprinting we do. Now, what does that look like? Well, it looks like, if you're arguing the persistence hunter theory of human evolution, yes, our ancestors were able to go out and track a beast for 2 hours, but it didn't mean they were running 8-minute miles or 7-minute miles tracking a beast 20 miles away from home, and then the 800-pound beast falls over, and now you're 20 miles from home in the middle of the Sahara or whatever, and you got to lug that thing back to camp. No, persistence hunting was about jogging and sprinting and hiding and stopping and crouching and smelling and sniffing and tracking and doing it again for 2 hours, and it was something that our ancestors engaged in as part of us surviving to hunt for food, but they didn't do it every day. And on the days off, they didn't go, hey, let's go for an easy 10-miler. They were like, let's take it easy. Let's relax, and let's survive on the calories we took in from the last hunt. But let's not waste those calories trying to lose weight doing something that's antithetical to health.
No doubt. It's so funny how the approach our ancestors took is so antithetical to the approach that we take now. It's like they were trying to eat the most amount of calories they could. Yeah. They were trying to move as little as possible.
Correct.
And now we tell people, like, eat less, move more. It's
Correct.
like, it's so funny how different those two approaches are.
Yeah.
And what surprised you about writing the new book?
What surprised me?
Yeah.
Well, no, the deeper I got into the lore of running, the deeper I got into all of the what's behind all the hype in the running boom, the more it became this sort of Rube Goldberg device, this thing that got pieced together that started with a book on jogging that Bill Bowerman wrote in the late 60s, and then work that Ken Cooper did in his lab on aerobics, and the idea that the more aerobic activity you did, the better your heart, the stronger your heart would be over time. Then Frank Shorter wins the gold medal in the marathon in Munich, in Mexico City in 1972, won the silver in Munich. Bill Rogers wins the Boston Marathon, and Jim Fixx writes a book, and the next thing you know, and then Nike comes along and makes thick cushioned shoes that enable good runners to put in more miles so that they can train without having to stop training. But meanwhile, citizen runners start buying these cushioned shoes and start training for marathons, and the next thing you know, this thing has snowballed into a mass effect where tens of millions of people are jogging or calling themselves runners or getting out and hitting the pavement. And it all sort of, it just sort of came together. There was no single thing that made it happen. So that was the most surprising part about this, is that over time it evolved into this movement that everybody assumed was good for you, and the more you did, the better it was, when in fact it turns out it was probably inappropriate for about 98% of all people who took up running.
So you mentioned that individual who developed this thesis around the more you ran, the better your heart was. Do you think there's some truth in that? Where are you at now with that?
Yeah, so like anything that I look at in the world of health and fitness and longevity, it's a bell curve. And so, no amount of exercise is a bad thing. Some amount of exercise is better. And then there's a point at which there's an appropriate amount of exercise, which is ideal for most people. It's an optimal range. And then if you start doing more than that, again, the bell curve goes down and it becomes a negative. And so with many of these pursuits, your fitness, as your fitness increases, your health improves up to a point. And then as you get very healthy and very fit, and your mind goes, I want to get even fitter, and I really want to start taxing my body and seeing what kind of performance I can do. Can I take my times down? Can I lift more weights? Can I jump higher? The pursuit of further excellence in terms of performance compromises health oftentimes. Yeah. I was a great example. I was a marathoner in the late 70s, and I was a very good one, a very competent marathoner. And the more miles I put in, the fitter I looked as a runner. I was on the cover of Runner World magazine 3 times as kind of as a fit model. But I was falling apart on the inside. I was overtraining. I had the diet that I was taking on to be able to fuel all those miles turned out to be very inflammatory. Mm-hmm. So in the pursuit of performance, I compromised my health. Mm-hmm. So we now go back and say, okay, well, all these things exist on a spectrum. What's the right amount of miles for people to run? Well, I would say if you're a very good, genetically gifted, adapted person, 30 miles a week is fine. Mm-hmm. But if you're a world-class athlete, go, 100, 110, 150, whatever you want to do. But for most people who are not genetically gifted and are not good biomechanic runners and who are not going to compete, who are just doing this for fun, running once a week is probably a fun pursuit, a good pursuit. And what we're suggesting in the book is, look, just whether you run 6 days a week or run 1 day a week, like at what point do you not call yourself a runner? Mm-hmm. If you can run the same pace 1 day a week on training that involves a lot of walking, some time in the gym, some other fun activities, and then 1 day a week you go out and run your 6 miles and you do it at X time, versus spending most of your training time putting in lots of miles, running 30, 35, 40 miles a week to run the same time for that 6 mile run. It makes no sense to me. I'd rather be, again, fit for life. Mm-hmm. I would rather be stronger, more flexible, have more mobility, be more resilient in terms of my immune system because I've trained all these different facets of my life. And then the fact that I can still go out and run the same pace once a week that I was running 6 days a week, in the old days, it seems like that's the way to look at it.
I totally agree. It's funny. It almost reminds me of the way Mike Mentzer approached bodybuilding.
Yes.
It's very similar. Yeah. It's like, let's prioritize recovery. And if you're able to prioritize recovery and still hit those same numbers that these other guys are hitting, then why are you training for 4 hours in the gym?
I was after I was a marathoner, I did triathlons for a while, and I was a fairly competent triathlete. I was not a good swimmer, but I was a good runner and a good cyclist. And I coached for 2 years. I coached a professional triathlon team. We traveled around the world, and by then I was in my 30s, late 30s, and I hadn't competed for years and years, but every once in a while I could go out and I could hang with these guys on a bike ride. I could hang with them on a run. I could hang with them on a track. I just couldn't do it every day. Yep. So once a week I could go do their workout with them, and they were like, "Oh my God, coach, you're 39 years old and we're 22 and you're hanging with us." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm giving myself 4 days rest before I try anything like this again. You guys are doing it every day, for better or worse, by the way."
Yeah. It's funny. It reminds me of your primal blueprint and your one tenet, which is play.
Yeah.
And I found that when it comes to cardio activities, when you're approaching them as play instead of this hard-nosed discipline thing that you have to be doing every day, it changes everything. It allows you to have obviously so much more fun with it, but your body just responds better. Yeah. When you're playing tennis and you're playing it for enjoyment versus going for a 10-mile jog.
Yeah, no. It's I spent enough time in my life managing discomfort in my workouts. Yep. Because as an endurance athlete, that's all you do is you manage discomfort. You're not having fun. And people say, "Well, I love to run." I'm like, bullshit, you don't love to run. You love having run. You love finishing the run and saying, "I just ran," and feeling good about having done it. But while you're doing it, there are very few moments where you're like, "Oh my God, this is so much fun." Like, I wish I could do this all the time. So I spent the last 20 years of my physical pursuits looking for ways to have fun, whether it's playing ultimate frisbee, which is my favorite game to play. Have you ever played?
I have played like in high school in gym class, and I loved it.
Yeah,
but I haven't. I haven't played since.
Yeah, it's a cool game. Or, just going on a bike ride, a fat bike ride on the sand with my friends, or going stand-up paddling with dolphins and tarpon and
awesome.
hammerheads. I mean, it's all cool, yeah.
That's so great. I mean, so where do you think you've evolved most in your approach from those days as a triathlete in terms of the foods you were eating, the way you were approaching things? What would you tell that version of yourself if you were to have a conversation with
Well, I mean, I spent a number of years grinding it out as a runner, and I'm fairly certain that I could not have run any faster than I ran with the new techniques. I'm pretty certain that I would have lasted longer. I would have had a longer career, maybe a little bit faster. But, my VO2 max was never impressive. I was just able to race for long periods of time at a high percentage of my VO2 max. And I did my full DNA range test a couple of years ago. It said I'm, 57% endurance athlete, 43% strength. That's too close to being evenly matched. I should have been 80% endurance and 20% strength if I was really going to be a top endurance athlete. So, I kind of missed my calling. If there'd been obstacle course racing or something like that around, that would have been perfect for me. So in those days, I guess the difference is we thought that carbohydrate was the be-all and the end-all, and you had to manage carbohydrates every day, every meal, because we were training hard every day. Like there were almost no days off. The days off were forced by injury or illness or something. But there were days we ran, 20, 25 days in a row, minimum 10 miles, maximum 30 miles, just hammering it out. And in many cases over weeks and weeks, rarely slower than, say, 7-minute miles. So it was really a fast-paced thing. So the assumption was you had to refill the glycogen stores every day. You had to carbo load every night. What that meant in those days was you had to take in like 700, 800, 1,000 grams of carbs every day. And that's not easy to do unless you're eating lots of grain-based products, drinking lots of beer, consuming stuff that you would consider pretty inflammatory these days, just to get that amount of glucose-producing carbs into your body. So I would, if I go back to tell my former self, look, you got to learn how to burn fat a little bit more efficiently, and to do that, you have to restrict carbs, maybe at least cyclically once in a while. You have to train either using keto as a strategy, as a tune-up mechanism, as an arrow in your quiver, not to live keto, but to spend a couple of weeks keto and train slower to burn fat and then reintroduce carbs. There are a lot of methods that I would have employed to maybe extend the life of my career, because I burned out pretty quickly after getting injured, and I think the injuries were a cause of both the shoes that I was wearing and the diet, the inflammatory nature of the diet. So would I do it all differently? Would I go back and do it? No, because everything where I'm today is all a result of all the mistakes I made, and I'm pretty happy with where I am. I have a lot of friends in the endurance community who stayed in the endurance community, who flogged themselves continuously and mercilessly for decades. After they retired, they became coaches and continued to train hard. And so many of them have had heart problems, heart operations, heart attacks and died, heart attacks and pacemakers installed. And so that would have been my plight if I'd stayed in that field much longer. As it is, I have issues with PVCs, premature ventricular contractions, which are a result of the overtraining that I did do in the 2 decades that I did before I finally said, I'm tapping out, that's enough for me. To the point that I haven't run a mile in 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So for cardio, it's just ultimate frisbee, fat
For
fight.
cardio, I don't even think in terms of cardio anymore.
Yeah,
So now, like right now in the last 2 years, I do some amount of sprinting, and not any of it is running because I have a bad hip now. So my sprinting might be a rope pull machine for 60 seconds all out rope pull, rest 3 minutes, do it again, or an assault bike, or a VersaClimber, or something where I can get the heart rate really high. I do that once a week. Then I do a lot of walking, and my walking isn't just walking. I live in Miami, so I put on a 20-pound weight vest sometimes, and I'll walk outside in the heat with a weight vest, so that gets the heart rate.
Oh yeah.
Not high, but it gets it up there a little bit. It's still zone 2, right? It's not massive like that. And then once a week, when I go out on the bike, I go zone 4 and zone 5 for an hour. And that's my one hard workout that I do per week that sort of contributes to maintaining a high VO2 max. Everything else is lifting and playing. And, if I paddle for an hour and 15 minutes, I could paddle really, really hard and never get my heart above 125 because, it's mostly upper body and the heart's going, yeah, I can handle this easily. But the arms are going, please stop.
And so for your weightlifting sessions, are you still doing like micro workouts or?
Yeah. So when I travel, I do micro workouts. Okay. And some days, if I'm not getting to the gym, I'll do, a couple of sets of push-ups or a couple of planks or air squats or something like that. I'm a big fan of micro workouts. However, I'm surrounding myself with a wonderful gym that's 4 floors down below me in the place I live in, so it's easy to take a break and just go down and do some stuff. So my micro workouts are mostly when I travel.
Nice. Okay, so for those workouts, what exercises are you doing? Are you doing mostly machines? Or?
Yeah, so the micro, you mean the ones
actual
in the gym?
Workouts, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the actual workouts. I'll do, like a pull day. I'll do wide grip pull-ups, pull-downs, lat stuff,
So pretty traditional.
Yeah, very traditional stuff in the gym.
Yeah.
Some machines, some free weights. On leg days, I sort of focus on hex bar deadlifts. Even though I do a lot of other stuff, I literally get on the chick machine and I do inner outer thighs because my hips are I want to keep the stabilizer muscles strong in my hips. So I'll do hex bar deadlifts. I'll do hamstring curls, and just rotate through. Yeah.
Have you been following this guy Brian Johnson? His approach to
which Brian Johnson?
Yeah, I was gonna say
there's Brian Johnson, Liver King. There's Brian Johnson, Live Longer King, and then there's Brian Johnson, the live singing king, the lead singer for AC/DC. They're all Brian Johnson.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. It's funny because it's they're almost Liver King and then anti-aging Brian Johnson. They're like opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
It's so funny. But when it comes to the anti-aging Brian Johnson, what do you think of his approach that he's taking? I
don't know. I think it's way over the top.
Yeah,
and I wish him luck. I mean, I applaud him for being, America's or the world's lab rat, guinea pig. So maybe something will come of that. But I don't think that he's going to come up with anything that's really novel by employing the protocols that he's employing right now. It's going to take, in 10 years, there'll be some gene therapy or something that'll really shift. But right now, the gene therapy that he purports to be using, I would be afraid of. I'd be
like myostatin stuff. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. So I'm not. Look, my whole thing about anti-aging is I don't think we live longer than 120, and I don't see a reason to live longer than 120. It's the finality of life that gives it meaning, that makes it worth getting up every day. If somebody said you could live forever, it might sound good at first, but then after a while, I guarantee you'd get bored and you'd get into trouble.
Totally.
And you'd wind up going to jail or getting shot. So my whole thing is I want to live. For me, 90 sounds like a good number, and if I'm still kicking, if I'm still able to, do a little bit of a sprint at 90. However slow that might be, or lift some weights at 90 and be able to travel around the world and enjoy the sights and sounds of other places and still taste my food and have access to cognition, memories, and things like that, then that's all I ask, really.
And it's like, what are you optimizing for, like lifespan or health span?
Yeah.
Because that health span is...
I want to talk to Brian. I invited him to go out on on a fat bike ride with me. We'll see if that happens.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. But I want to kind of dig a little bit deeper and like, okay, what is it? Do you honestly feel like you're getting the most out of every day when in fact most of your day is focused on protocols, on this timing to get this amount of pills and this timing to get this amount of red light therapy and the cold exposure and all of the other biohacking components that he seems to be employing. And again, I wish him well. I think he's very entertaining. I think he might be a fun guy to hang around and have a conversation with. But I don't understand the ultimate goal. If the ultimate goal is to live longer, or as he says, to not die, like, okay, that's I don't know. It's like, don't suck at life or whatever. I mean,
it's funny too, because it seems in some ways like you almost step over dollars for pennies. Like when you think about like his approach, like having muscle mass and lifting heavy, it seems like it's, as people age, it becomes of the utmost importance. Yeah. And I don't know, I think, I feel like lifting heavy stuff, going in the sun and enjoying time with loved ones is like, that's going to get you.
It's what there is, man. I don't, as we said, I just don't understand the motivation beyond look, he's a tech guy, and tech guys from Silicon Valley tend to have a mindset. They want a problem to solve. And if they can't find a problem to solve, quite often they'll invent one. So, in the case of like, there was a food product called Soylent for a while, and it was a protein meal replacement. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it was, you added water, and these guys raised like $100 million from tech incubators to start this instant protein food replacement company, meal replacement company. And the premise was, because they were all coders, they're all programmers, we don't have time to eat. So we want something we can add water to that gives us complete nutrition in we can slug it down in 25 seconds and get back to coding, right? And this will be so much better than ordering out for pizza and having Cokes as we sit at our desks and continue to program. So the assumption was people don't like to eat. Well, people love to eat. I'm sorry, people love to frickin' eat. And so the problem that you're solving by creating this product, which, by the way, was the epitome of shitty product. It had bad fats and oils in it. It had low-grade protein. It had, the wrong sorts of vitamin mineral blends in it, and it tasted like crap. But it solved a problem, which was people don't like to eat, and give me something like. So I feel like tech is always looking for solutions, and sometimes the problems that they even identify as problems aren't really that. Yep. So if the problem is don't die, it misses this entire aspect of what is life. Like don't die. That's an easy thing. But what about live life to its fullest and enjoy the most out of every moment? And they're two, sort of opposing concepts. One is sort of the glass half empty, and one is glass half full kind of thing. There's
no doubt. It's funny. I had this realization. I was getting deep into learning about all the biohacking stuff, and I realized I was listening to so many guys who were single in their 40s. Yeah. Because there's like, when you look at a lot of these biohackers or these guys that are really into this stuff, they don't have what you want, which is a vibrant social life, having fun, a family, a wife, kids. Like it's an interesting dichotomy, and it's like you can't really. Almost seems like you have to choose one.
Well, you don't have to choose one, but I would want for everyone to have a family. Look, yes, when I was 37 when I had my first kid. There was a possibility that I was going to go through life without a partner and without children. I was sort of a confirmed bachelor. I just met the right woman, and she said, look, we're doing this. And we did, and I had 2 kids, and they're amazing. It's the best thing I ever did, and now my kids are having kids. And so that's the circle of life completion. When it's one thing to have your own kids, and you go, okay, I did my part for humanity. I literally passed my genetic material along to create another generation. That's a big thing right now. But when your kids have kids, then you see, okay, now that completes the cycle and the circle.
What was it like for you being like entering into that later stage of your 30s and not being married yet? Were you comfortable with the fact of like, I might never have kids? Like,
yeah, I mean, I was comfortable at the time. So in my case, it wasn't like I was resolute in my bachelorhood. It was just hadn't had good luck with relationships. In retrospect, almost always my fault. But when I finally did, it was like, oh wow, okay, this is what's available. This is how it should be. And then we had children, and it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And you realize when you have kids that's really all there is. I mean, everything that I do as a parent, whether it's creating an empire, a company, is for the betterment of my family, right? It's to make sure that my family and the generations behind are well taken care of, because that's kind of the human drive, is to make sure that your family succeeds and is happy and healthy, and that, so your friends who are the biohackers who are 40 plus years old and don't have families, don't have kids, I don't know what the motivation is for a lot of this. I have a lot of friends in LA who are in their 50s and 60s who I spend a lot of time with, and they miss that window, right? And now they're 65 years old and still dating 28-year-old, actresses, and they think that's what life is about. And it's a bit more rich than that, I think.
And one of your sons is your co-founder, correct?
Yes. So my son Kyle is a co-founder in this footwear company, the shoe company called Paloova, and we're having a blast. And that's more of the circle of life kind of thing.
No
He's crushing it as CEO, and never ceases to impress the hell out of me, just with his thoughtfulness and his way of thinking, which is different from mine. And what's interesting is, I'm a bit more. We're left brain, right brain different, awesome. and so we complement each other. Yeah. I'm fairly creative. I'm a thought leader. I don't like the metrics and doing the rote stuff. He's all about the spreadsheets and the systems and the organization and all that. So we mesh very nicely.
That's a great balance.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so, do you think there's because obviously when you create a Primal Kitchen and you do that for three years, and you make a lot of mistakes along the way. My friend Brett Ender, who on the Meat Mafia podcast, I know you've been on there, he described them to me as learning taxes. Like all these mistakes that you make when you're starting your first business. Are there some key mistakes or lessons that you learned through Primal Kitchen that you're being extra cautious of this next time around, or just things that you're keeping in mind?
Absolutely, there are things I keep in mind, and I can't really point out what they are, other than that because I'm a creative and I always did stuff for myself, I fancied myself the smartest guy in the room for a long time. And I think that hindered my business progress. I was not willing to hand over the reins of any particular task or realm of tasks to any one employee without my direct oversight. And then with Primal Kitchen, when I brought on Morgan Bueller as a co-founder, and because she'd had experience in the food business, I knew what I wanted, but she sort of knew how to do it and how to, and if not how to do it, who to call to get it done. Yep. That was really the first time I'm like, oh my God, this is real synergy here. This is like I can do my thought leading, glad handing, coming up with ideas, making up slogans and all the things that I'm good at, and she can execute and find people to execute. And so that was a big lesson learned late in life. I'd read about it in books before, but I'd never really, employed it. And so that's what I'm doing with my son now. I'm literally throwing him into the deep end of the pool. I'm saying, you're pretty damn competent. Let's figure this out. I don't have the answer to this particular problem, but let's work on it. The difference now is that I have the means. I have enough, financial security that I can put money into this company and not worry about losing other people's money because I went out and, so many founders today spend much of their time raising capital and not running the business.
Yeah.
And as an investor, as an angel investor in 25 companies that I'm still involved with, that's the biggest complaint I have, is that they spend so much time with their hands off the wheel just trying to raise the next round rather than really focusing on running the company.
It's an interesting thing where when you're running this business for 3 years and you're so in it, and then Jordan Peterson has this quote where he says humans are at their most fulfilled when they're walking uphill.
Yeah.
And it must have been quite a shock to the system when you let the reins go and you sold the company. How was that experience for you?
It was horrible. It was literally weird because on the one hand, building the company, look, as an entrepreneur, there were days when you're like, that's it, we're over, we're out of business, sayonara, and then 2 days later something happens and we're back in business, it's looking good. So it's like being a manic depressive. It's like a bipolar experience. In terms of the long range strategy, I was always upbeat, even though I was on the hook for all the money. I had a cosigner, a guarantor on the loans. The process was amazing. Meeting all of the buyers and getting the feedback from the people who used our product was spectacular. I loved hearing, the accolades that you guys are changing the industry. So it was, we had a big cheerleader camp behind us. So the process, the journey was amazing. And then the day I sold, I remember I cried a little bit after I hung up the phone when it was a big call with all of the investment bankers and the representatives and the lawyers. There were 20 people on the call, and somebody just said, "Okay, we just hit enter for the wire transfer of $160 million," and it's like into my account. And so that was one of those moments when the whole experience was worth it, and then there was this moment of like, "Fuck, now what? Like, what's next?" And it was very much like when I had been an athlete. And you train and train and train, and it's all about the journey, and it's all about managing discomfort in your training, and it's digging a pain cave for yourself in a race, and then you win the race, and you're like, there's a massive elation, like, I did it, I achieved this goal, and then the next day you wake up and you go, like, what do I do? Like, how do I top that, or what do I do now? Or I know Lance Armstrong, who's a friend of mine, talked about for the longest time after winning the Tour, he couldn't wait to get back on the training regimen, because that was really what he enjoyed. He enjoyed being out on the roads with his friends and doing the countryside. The race was, the Tour was what it was. It was, the work that you had to do, but it was the culmination of all the training. And his ability to enjoy the process, to enjoy the actual the process of training, and to know that this was, even though it's painful and it's managing discomfort at the time, it's what it's going to take to get to the goal. Yep. So that's why when I sold the company, I didn't retire for long. I started a new company. That's when I started Paloova. I said, okay, I cannot be retired. I'm not going to just play golf and do all that, retirement bullshit. So I said, okay, this is a thing that I've been really has been bothering me for the last 40 years. Footwear, how I hate shoes. I'd rather go barefoot. I've never liked athletic footwear. I've never liked fashion footwear. I've never really been a fan of any kind of shoes at all. Let me revisit this concept of building a shoe from the ground up that's the most comfortable shoe I've ever worn, it's functional, and it looks good.
That's awesome. And how long was that gap between when you sold Primal Kitchen and then you started the new company?
So I started the new company about 2 years after I sold Primal Kitchen, but I spent the first 2 years trying to buy another company in footwear, and then trying to make that. And when that deal fell apart, then I just said I'll just start my own.
Why were you thinking about buying the company?
I just didn't want to necessarily reinvent the wheel, but as these things happen, my not being successful in acquiring that other company is what caused me to start from zero. And rather than take an inferior product and make it better, I started from zero and made the product I wanted, built it exactly to my specifications from the ground up. So that was these sort of lucky coincidences that happened, from a failure, from having failed to try to buy this company to succeeding in creating my own with a better product anyway. So this is what the universe hands you these opportunities on a regular basis, and you have to sort of identify, is that a bad thing or a good thing? Is that an opportunity or is that a setback?
Yeah, it's fascinating. It seems like a common theme for the success that you've had. It reminds me of this quote from Rick Rubin where he says, the audience comes last. All that matters is that you're making something that you love to the best of your abilities here and now. Yeah. It seems like that's really been at the core of both Primal Kitchen and Paloova. For sure.
And Rick's a very good friend of mine. And
oh, yeah?
Yeah. So we hung out in Malibu a lot together, and really? we still text each other on complaints about what's going on in the world. But no, he's spot on. I mean, in my case, I developed Primal Kitchen for me. I was dissatisfied with what was available in the grocery store, on the shelves. There were no sauces or dressings or toppings that fit my specifications for what I would consider a consumable that I would use with reckless abandon. And so I set out to create some things that I would put on my food that were commercially viable, and then based on what we came up with, and the first one was a mayonnaise, introduce those to Whole Foods and Sprouts and Publix, and next thing you know, we're in 60,000 stores. Not the next thing you know, but eventually we're in 60,000 stores. And with Paloova, with the shoe company, same thing. I hated shoes. I was like, nobody's making a shoe that I really love. I'm going to have to do it myself. And so I built a shoe for me. The entire line of Paloova shoes is built around my size 11 foot and my wear testing 15 of these models over a 2-year period. So even after I started the company, my son and I started this company in 2021. It was 2 years before we introduced, it was 2023, it was last year, March of last year, when we introduced we went live with the first product for sale. 2 years of just prototyping and wear testing and making sure that they fit my specifications. And when they did, I'm like, okay, now I'll let other people experience what I'm experiencing.
It's awesome too, because when you're making something for the audience, like, it's so much more of a guessing game versus when you're making it for yourself. You know that there's at least one person out there that loves it, which is obviously you. But then if you love it, the odds are that other people are going to as well.
So we have tens of thousands of shoes in inventory right now. And I keep telling my son, I'm like, if and we're doing very well. We've got a lot of business, but if this doesn't take off, at least I'm set for life with shoes.
That's the truth. Yeah. It's so funny. But so what was Rick Rubin like as an individual? Because he's such a mystical figure when you see him on podcasts or in clips or reading his book. He almost seems very monk-like.
No, he is. He's very monk-like. He's a great guy. I met him on the beach in Malibu at Laird Hamilton's house one day, and he basically came up and said, I just want to thank you. I've read a lot of your stuff, and I lost 100 pounds doing paleo primal diet. And that was our introduction, and we became good friends, and we've shared, we've co-invested in some deals together, and we're I think like-minded in terms of our political leanings. He had the misfortune of having 2 of his houses burned down in the last fire, the same fire that my house burned, by the way, in Malibu. No, he's just very thoughtful. He stops and thinks before he speaks, which is almost rare these days. So it's that it's coming from what Rick talks about is coming from his heart. More than some ruminating and cogitating kind of thing. It's just coming from the center. So I really appreciate that from him.
Do you think that is what separates him in a way, like his superpower?
Well, I mean, sure. Look, when you're a musician and you go to a guy and say, "I want you to criticize the crap out of my work and tell me what's wrong with it," that's pretty vulnerable, right? Oh, yeah. So he's kind of opened himself up to a lot of people for that reason. He's really good at what he does, and he famously says he doesn't know how to operate a mixing board that well, and so I think that's great. I think he does. Doesn't play many instruments, but he knows what he likes. Yep. And he's got taste, and not a lot of people do. So again, he's carved out an amazing career for himself, and he's got a great family. And he's sort of on that path as well. He's really about family and friends, and so
his diet stuff is fascinating as well. When you hear him speak about how much difficulty he had throughout the years of trying to lose weight, and he was like almost nocturnal, and then it seemed like he really started to have success when he prioritized sunlight and animal protein.
Yeah, well, that seems to be a common theme with the people I hang out with. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really crazy, and it's so cool because I wonder if this experience is something that you can relate to, which is you get into the world of health primarily for yourself. Like, it's a selfish endeavor. You're just trying to optimize for yourself, but then it puts you in this position to help so many people just as a byproduct. Yeah, it's such a fascinating thing.
Again, back to this idea that I'm trying to identify things that work for me and then share them with the world. So one of the things that drives my entrepreneurship is I feel compelled to share what I know with the world. And so in the case of my first book on training for triathlons, which I wrote in 1981, and it came out in 1982, so this is a long time ago, the Runner's World Triathlon Training Book. I had finished 4th at Ironman. I had seen a lot of people already, and even that far back, overtraining, and I said, no, there's got to be a kinder, gentler way to train and compete well in these events without killing yourself. When I discovered that, I felt compelled to share that with the rest of the world. Later on, when I started training much less, and I shifted my diet around, and I got rid of my irritable bowel syndrome and my GERD and my arthritis through dietary changes, I felt compelled to share that with the rest of the world. So I wrote the Primal Blueprint. I published Mark's Daily Apple. Over the years of publishing Mark's Daily Apple, I wrote more and more about food, more and more about the things that you should not be eating, probably, and the things that maybe you should eat more of, like animal protein and vegetables and fruits and starchy tubers, and eating more natural. But I also recognized that that was an unsustainable diet for a lot of people without adding flavor, a lot of flavor to this. So it's the sauces, the dressings, the toppings, the methods of preparation, the herbs and spices and things that you put on food that really make eating healthy sustainable over a lifetime. Well, started out with putting a recipe up on Mark's Daily Apple once a week for mayonnaise or ketchup or salad dressing or something. Interestingly, I published a book in 2011 called The Primal Blueprint, Sauces, Dressings, and Toppings. And it was just a cookbook on sauces and dressings and toppings. My original book, The Primal Blueprint, had sold by then about 150,000 copies, maybe 200,000 copies. So I printed, I think, 30,000 copies of this other book, this cookbook, The Primal Blueprint, Sauces, Dressings, and Toppings. And we sold 6,000 copies over a period of 3 years. So it was a horrible failure. But what it told me was that people, they want something to put on their food. They just don't want to make it themselves. So that's when I went to the kitchen and I said, okay, I'm going to make some of the recipes that are in this cookbook that did not sell. I'm going to make them in ways that could be commercialized. And that's what became Primal Kitchen.
It's fascinating, and it's so cool with how the seed oil movement kind of coincided with that. It's like lovely timing.
Yeah. Well, and I tell people, Primal Kitchen might not have succeeded if we'd launched the product even 5 years earlier, because the awareness of not just how bad seed oils are, but the fact that there are some good oils like avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, butter, lard, ghee. The awareness was not there. And so people would have said, wait, like, what is avocado oil and why are you charging me, 3x for a 12-ounce jar of mayonnaise that I could get, anywhere for next to nothing?
I've been dying to try out this mayo steak that you've been tweeting about.
It's one of my it's one of the weird things. Somebody on my team came up with it a couple of years ago, and I'm like, I don't know. And then you do it, and you go, holy Jesus, it's amazing. And I'm like a plain steak guy. I don't even put sauces on steak, but there's for some reason the mayo steak thing, because it's got egg and it's got avocado oil in it, it just works. So you got to try it. Yeah.
And that's like pan-seared?
Pan-seared, yeah, yeah.
I'm going to try that today, I think.
I did a post on a couple days ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, and I got shit for having a conduction oven. I live in a condo in Miami. There's no gas lines allowed, and I'm telling you, I can make a better steak in a pan on that stovetop than on a gas grill.
I agree with you. Those pan-seared steaks, they always come out the best, it seems like.
You got to let them rest, right? You got to really go for it on both sides, minimum, and then you just got to let them rest. Sometimes you go really hard for 2 minutes on either side, and then cover it with something when you let it rest, and it just sort of cooks it. This idea of resting a steak didn't occur to me until about 15 years ago. Before that, I'm like, cook it, eat it, cook it, eat it, and then just being patient and waiting for the steak to kind of, it makes it, more flavorful, more tender. Yeah. So
you're making me hungry. So I wanted to throw some hot topics at you, some things that people have been talking about more recently, and just get your thoughts on it.
Sure.
Yeah. So first one would be diet soda.
I mean, Jesus, diet soda. I have good friends who are in the health space who drink diet soda a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to tell them not to do that. It's if you're otherwise healthy and you like the taste of diet soda, everything's nuanced, right? If you're coming off of being an alcoholic and you drink diet soda, that's probably a move in the right direction. On the other hand, if you're somebody who's still struggling to find that area of eating right and getting your macros right, and then you're drinking 6 or 8 cans of diet soda a day because you think there's no calories and therefore it's free, that's not going to work. Yeah. And in many cases, with those people, the body takes that diet soda mouthfeel and taste and sweetness, and the brain goes, hey, wait. We got the sense that we got some calories, so we got to eat to make up for the calories that we did not
get.
It
makes people more hungry.
Yeah.
Interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
So on calories in, calories out.
Calories in, calories out. I cannot understand otherwise smart people still spouting these calories in, calories out theory. It's more complex than that. It's more nuanced. I would say you're better off looking at calories burned versus calories stored. Yeah. Okay, so you take in calories and you don't store them. Maybe it's because you burn them off thermogenically. Maybe it's because you literally crap them out because you have bad digestion. You might take in 4,000 calories of roughage and sugar and some other stuff, and not digest and not absorb those calories. So it isn't about the calories you take in, it's about the calories you actually store from having eaten. And then it's about the calories you burn. Mm-hmm. So when you burn calories, you theoretically you're, but when we talk about calories in, calories out, we also don't acknowledge the fact that some things like protein aren't combustible. They're combustible, but they're not intended to be burned. Mm-hmm. So you say, well, I had 120 grams of protein, and that's 480 calories, but maybe your body's using 50 or 60 of those grams of protein to rebuild muscle, to shore up bone tissue, to create enzymes. And so you would not want to ascribe a calorie to it. So why even say that's a calorie coming in?
It's reductionist in a way.
It's too reductionist, and then there's you could make the case like, all right, so I'm going to give you 2,500 calories of Skittles, and I'm going to give you 2,500 calories of 120 grams of protein, 150 grams of carbs in the form of green leafy vegetables and starchy tubers, and then the balance in healthy fats. Mm-hmm. And you're telling me that those are equal. Those are the same. There's no way. Because what most people, they invoke, the laws of thermodynamics. But in fact, this has more to do with the laws of biodynamics and biochemistry and hormones. And, whether the introduction of sugar and fat at the same time is going to cause a rise in insulin and a sequestering of all of those calories into fat cells, versus a high protein meal where there'll be a little bit of insulin, but it'll drive amino acids into into muscle cells. It's so nuanced that to reduce it to calories in, calories out, which many people hear as eat less, move more.
Yeah, exactly.
We open this conversation with the fact that many people who are training for a marathon and using their training as a weight loss program, in other words, I have 40 pounds to lose, I'm going to enter a marathon that's going to happen in 6 months, I'm going to start with my team in training or whatever coaching program I have, and start running 30, 40, 50, 60 miles a week, thinking that I'm burning off the calories because I'm running. Well, in many cases, you're burning through glycogen to get the workout done, and then your brain is not used to, and your body hasn't become equipped to burn off the stored body fat, which is really what you want to do. You want to burn stored body fat. So you burn all these, you go through all the glycogen in your system, and then you get home, and the brain goes, you got to eat, man. You got to eat more and more calories we got to pay that debt back. Yeah. And so these people never wind up losing weight.
Yeah, I find it's easier to lose weight when I work out less.
Yeah.
Because I just get this ravenous appetite.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
And so where does metabolic flexibility fit into that equation? It seems like it's kind of the key there to being able to...
Yeah, so metabolic flexibility is that's really the holy grail of any eating strategy that you take on. And some of them work, so metabolic flexibility describes the body's ability to extract energy from whatever source is handy at the time for whatever task you're taking on. Conversely, most people never get to the point where they learn how to burn body fat, so they get fatter and fatter over time, and they depend on glycogen and glucose as their main sources of fuel, and so they have to eat every couple of hours, and over time they gain weight. Metabolic flexibility would say, okay, I've trained my systems to extract fat from my stored body fat, energy from my stored body fat, energy from my fat on my plate of food, energy from the glycogen in my muscles, energy from the glucose in my bloodstream, energy from the ketones that my liver makes in the absence of glucose. And that's the body being flexible. That's the liver primarily being flexible enough to say, we don't need to eat every 2 hours. We are very good. We built the metabolic machinery to be able to burn fats for long periods of time and not even suffer no consequences, suffer no dip in blood sugar, no spacing out or loss of memory or hangriness or any of that other stuff, because metabolic flexibility is what is literally the genetic recipe that we all have. We're born with metabolic flexibility. We just sort of lose it over time. We don't train it the same way we train muscles and train everything else in our body. So again, back to the calories in, calories out, you can, if you're metabolically flexible, you can burn stored body fat, and you can burn glycogen, you can burn all these different things. If you're not metabolically flexible, you tend to need more carbohydrate to continue your, your energy pathway throughout the day, and eat, breakfast and a snack and lunch and a snack and dinner and a snack and kind of depend on that your whole life.
Yeah, I've been falling in love with this approach of altering the carb intake based on how hard training is. And like the harder I'm training, then I could post-workout have a good amount of rice and stuff like that. But then on days that I'm not training, going much lower carb. Yeah. It's like I really like that balance there, because it's kind of allowing you to get the best of those both worlds.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you are training hard, which is, again, sort of it's not a real human survival strategy. But if you're training hard, then the converse of that training strategy is, okay, I want to fill up my muscle stores with glycogen before I go hard. Mm-hmm. And if I've gone hard and I've drained them and I'm going to do it again tomorrow, then I'll, in that timed eating window after a workout, I'll take in some protein, some carbs, and I'll replenish glycogen so I can do something else hard tomorrow. Mm-hmm. That's one way of doing it. The other way that I do is I sort of use the minimum effective dose of exercise. So I'm like, okay, what's the... I want to stay strong or get stronger, maintain muscle mass with the least amount of
training,
pain, suffering, sacrifice, discipline, time. So what does that look like for me? It's workout and then not work out hard again for a day or two or whatever. So if I'm not going to work out again hard tomorrow or the next day, I don't need to carbo load. I don't need, because my muscles are going to replenish glycogen anyway. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be a little bit slower process, but they'll get to the same level of being filled within 2 or 3 days, versus doing a 300 or 500 gram carb bomb tonight, and then wake up tomorrow with extra glycogen in my muscles. Yep. The fact that I don't want to train tomorrow if I trained hard today. Look, if I train hard today, if I trained well enough to cause the body to respond by getting stronger, I shouldn't be able to train tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And if I can train that hard tomorrow, then I didn't do enough today to prompt the genetic signaling to build more muscle. Does that make sense?
Yes, that absolutely makes sense. Yeah. And so, do you think like that anabolic window is kind of bogus at this point? I feel like I hear things on both sides of the spectrum a lot, where people are like, you need to get that protein in post-workout. People saying that doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah, I mean, I see it a lot in, some of the Huberman, Attia, Galpin, Patrick, things. But I don't ascribe to that. I don't do that. I don't eat right after a workout. The theory that I use is, again, if you're going to do it hard every day, then that window after the post-workout window of 1 hour
becomes more important.
Used to be 45 minutes, but then do it. But what happens when you work, like if you lift heavy, you're prompting your body to generate a pulse of growth hormone and testosterone. And insulin blunts both of those. So if you eat right after a workout, you are blunting that growth hormone and insulin, and that, testosterone pulse that we want to get, right? So if you are going to work out hard again tomorrow, then you eat, but then you don't get the benefits of hypertrophy because you blunted the response. It's
just
weird. It's counterproductive, right? On the other hand, if you're a basketball player and you've got a game tomorrow, you don't care about hypertrophy. You're gonna eat to replenish immediately and do all of that. If you're a runner and you're training every single day, then you're gonna do it that way. But in my life, because I'm again trying to establish what's the minimum protocol to maintain muscle mass and not overtrain myself, I purposely don't eat after a workout. I don't eat for 2 hours after a workout because I want the benefit of that growth hormone and testosterone pulse.
Interesting. And so what's your thoughts on fasting nowadays?
Well, I mean, I eat in a compressed eating window. So I some people call that fasting. I don't.
Like an intermittent fasting.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't even call it intermittent fasting. It's a weird, intermittent fasting is like a weird thing. It's really intermittent eating because you're not really fasting long enough. I do think that when I eat 3 meals a day, I don't feel as good. Mm-hmm. So for me, I'll have my first meal around 1:30 in the afternoon, and I usually work out around 10:30, 11. So I'll work out fasted, and again, I don't eat after the workout for a while. And that seems to work for me. As my wife says, I get a little puffy, which is a weird thing for me as a skinny shit to say. I'm puffy if I start eating 3 meals a day, and I don't need the energy, and it makes me feel uncomfortable. So why do it?
Yeah, I mean, it makes so much sense, and there's something to be said about that. That feeling you have when you're like the opposite of bloated. I don't even know the word for it.
Cut.
Yeah, you feel real caught up, and there's a sharpness to your mind when you're just a little bit hungry.
Yeah,
it's I guess it has to do with the brain start maybe using ketones versus glucose, but there's something to be said there. It's really interesting how when you're a little hungry, the brain starts to work better.
Yeah,
it's fascinating. And so, thoughts on Ozempic? It's the hot topic nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of doctors who, even in our space, in the alternative medicine, natural, ancestral space, promoting Ozempic. Mm-hmm. The irony here is that you can achieve the same thing by just eating a certain way. So all Ozempic is doing is just controlling your appetite for you. Mm-hmm. So is that cheating? Well, no more than anything else is cheating, I guess. But my concern is all of those people, they also will say that once you start using it, you're going to have to use it for the rest of your life, and that I find scary. Yeah. The fact that people who are using it to get ready for the wedding next summer or this coming summer, so they can fit into their wedding dress to lose 12 pounds, and then get what they call Ozempic face. They're losing fat and muscle out of their face, and so there's a new generation of plastic surgeons and dermatologists with Botox and fillers standing ready to correct those mistakes.
It's funny.
But yeah, I don't support it, and I think there's not enough evidence behind long-term use to recommend it to my friends. Yeah. On the other hand, I have friends that are using it who are very happy and don't know what I'm talking about. So
it's fascinating because it's like one of the individuals, just to give an example, who asked my opinion on it, and their light environment is god awful. It's their bright light, staying up late, eating their last meal at 1 a.m.
Wow, yeah.
And it's it's almost like this Band-Aid effect of why are you struggling with this to begin with, and then that's what you're going to be on it for life because you're never fixing these habits to begin with that are causing you to be in this position.
Yeah,
it's interesting. And so, what about seed oils? I know obviously they're probably not that good for you, but how hard do you go out of your way to avoid them?
Great question. I don't go out of my way the way many people do. I was at a dinner the other night with 20 people in the biohacking space, and oh my God, the amount of people. Does this have gluten? Does that have gluten? Does this have seed oils? And this was at a great restaurant. Does that have seed oils? And I'm like, people, lighten up. When I'm home, don't have any seed oils in the house. Cook with either algae oil or butter or avocado oil, or use extra virgin avocado oil in salads. When I'm at some restaurants that I know, I will ask for a salad undressed if I know they have great olive oil and vinegar at the table. Other restaurants, I literally will take a great salad dressing that they have, and then I'll add back more olive oil and vinegar to that. I mean, there's so many ways around this to just not be beholden to the strict dogmatic mantra, 0 seed oils in my life. It's I think we sometimes miss. Look, I want every bite of food I eat to taste amazing, and so if I'm going to have to give that up just because I'm trying to desperately avoid seed oils at all costs, it's not worth the short-term hit.
Yeah, and I think so many of those people, they're like nocebo affecting themselves into more issues than because like they're so worried about like all the little things when it comes to, instead of just enjoying the pleasure of it.
Right.
Like there's something to be said there about just enjoying a meal fully.
Yep. No, I mean, it's really interesting to watch how people's minds work in certain settings, and when I'm with them, they're always watching me, like, Mark, you had a piece of bread. I'm like, I had a bite. I had 2 bites and a lot of butter. Hate me. I don't. Whatever.
You mentioned algae oil. I've never heard of that before.
Oh yeah, no. So there are companies making algae oil right now. Algae oil is a very wonderful, buttery, flavored oil. It's high. It's the highest in monounsaturates of any oil.
Really?
So low PUFAs, like 5% polyunsaturated fatty acids and 3% saturated, and then 90% monounsaturates.
Is it
high
liquid
smoke point, liquid oil, high smoke point? Yeah.
Awesome.
There are a couple of. There's a company called Thrive. You can get their product online. That's the one I use. Yeah.
Interesting. And so collagen.
I mean, I'm a big fan of collagen for a long time. I think it's missing in most people's diets. If you look at most of the collagenous protein in the human body, the muscles to a certain extent, but certainly the tendons, ligaments, cartilage, connective tissue, fascia, bones to a certain extent, have these collagen peptides, this thing that links them together and as a raw material for building this sort of connective tissue. We don't get much of it in our diet. We don't, choice cuts of meat don't have these collagen peptides that we need. They have some of them, but not in the amounts that we fully need. So up until 50 years ago, or maybe 100 years ago, we had bone broth, we had chicken stock and beef stock, and always reused parts of the animal. We ate chicken skin, fish skin, and these are all sources of collagen that are no longer present in most modern diets. So even up until the 1970s and 80s, we had kids ate Jell-O, right? And Jell-O is a source of these collagen peptides, gelatin.
Yep.
And then Jell-O got a bad rap for having too much sugar and whatever, and so gelatin was taken off the menu. So we had a couple of decades there where there was no good source of collagen until bone broth re-entered the picture about 12 or 15 years ago. And bone broth is a good source of collagen. But I think we need to be taking in substantial amounts of collagen on a regular basis. I take 20 grams a day myself.
In powdered form?
I take it in powdered form, yeah. I put it in a drink. Actually, I make my pre-workout drink now is sort of like collagen with Element.
Nice. Which flavor Element?
I like any of the lime sort of stuff.
Me as well.
Raspberry is pretty good. But no, I think those guys have done a good job with that.
They really have. Have you tried the new sparkling?
I'm supposed to be on the list to get some, and I haven't gotten any yet. Have you?
They're good.
But I'm going to say it was my idea, but I started telling these guys 3 years ago, dude, my favorite way of drinking this is putting it in cold sparkling water. So yeah, it's a really good thirst quencher.
Yeah, the grapefruit flavor is fantastic of the sparkling one.
Yeah, and that's what I would choose. Yeah.
Yep. So, what about this conversation right now around cholesterol, statins, this whole world where it seems like there's some people saying high cholesterol isn't that big of a deal, and then there's other people who are saying that is totally a lie, and then there's ApoB, and this whole conversation. What do you think about it?
Well, it's very complicated and nuanced, and I've been on the anti-statin bandwagon for more than 20 years now.
And why is that?
I just think cholesterol is not, first of all, it's not the proximate cause of heart disease. Cholesterol is one of the most beneficial molecules in the human body. It's involved in hormone creation, precursor for a lot of stuff. It's brain tissue. It's a functioning molecule on a lot of cell membranes, and then to vilify it and try and eradicate it out of existence with a drug seems completely wrong thinking, based on this long-term association with heart disease, atherosclerosis, and the presence of plaque that contains cholesterol. So, first of all, cholesterol's, you have these LDL and this HDL, and these are lipoproteins that carry cholesterol. So we're really talking about the lipoproteins more than the actual cholesterol. Cholesterol is recognized as look, if in the absence of consuming cholesterol, your body makes 1,400 grams of it a day, milligrams of it a day, 1,400 milligrams a day, because it needs cholesterol. Your body needs cholesterol. It is the raw material for bile, which is the way that we emulsify and digest fats. Mm-hmm. So it's one of the reasons why if you look at vegan diets where a cardiologist has taken like somebody who's got heart disease and puts them on a vegan diet and watches their cholesterol drop, one of the reasons is if you're on a vegan diet, you have no need to digest fats. So that part of your use of cholesterol disappears. It's no longer, the body doesn't keep on using something it's not going to use. So I've been, there's all sorts of correlations between high cholesterol and people living longer than, like, people who have old people who have a high cholesterol tend to live longer or die less at a rate of all-cause mortality than people who have a cholesterol below 120.
So funny. Yeah.
It's so complicated and so nuanced. And I think this ApoB thing is probably that's really the big thing to look at if you're getting your blood tested. But, my cholesterol has my total stayed around 265 for 20 years now. And my cardiologist says he would kill for my blood work. He gets it. My HDL is 85, and even though I have a high LDL level, they're the large fluffy particles, and he's my fasting insulin is between 1 and 2. My triglycerides are 45 to 75. My A1C is 4.7. I mean, all these things in my blood work are like, why would you? And yet, if I were to present to a GP who had no prior information about ancestral living, he would put me on statins right away. He'd say, "Oh my God, 265. We got to put you on a Crestor or some sort of a statin drug."
Yeah, and I've been writing this Twitter thread for a while now. It's gotten more and more complex as I've done more and more research on the history of statins and the corruption in that whole industry and the way that it came about, and it's just it's a bit absurd, the whole
so
story
one of the
there.
things that statins do is they interfere with a pathway that creates CoQ10, and
Which
CoQ10 is essential to life, and so typically when you take a statin drug, people say we should probably take CoQ10 along with that. Now, ironically, a friend of mine who's been in this industry a long time and did some of the original research said that the original patent for statins included CoQ10. But CoQ10 was so expensive, a raw material, that they took that out of the patent. And they just made the statin. So, you talk about the corruption and the stuff that goes on behind the scenes in the interest of selling more pills to more people. It's pretty crazy.
It really is. So, aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort. What do you think about that quote?
Aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort. I don't mind that. I mean, I'm seeking comfort, but I'm not. I don't know how aggressive I am about it. I would say, aging is just a normal artifact of living and has more to do with reactive oxygen species and metabolism than anything else, and how you are able to adjust your metabolism based on your intake of energy, and the way you choose to burn energy is probably more precise. But aging is just something that every animal does. I don't know that any other animal would say they're aggressively pursuing comfort, right? They still age, but they're
yeah. And so, what's your daily routine looking like nowadays, in the sense of food, both food and you kind of illustrated already with training? Yeah,
I mean, I get up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, read 2 papers, do puzzles, do crosswords, and Sudokus and Ken-Kens and connections and spelling bee and all of those things that are now available. I go to work around 9 and start the day with answering emails or writing. Break at 10 or 10:30 to go do a workout for typically an hour, not much more than an hour. Come back, go to work for a little bit. We talked about micro workouts early on. I'm doing micro work. Have lunch 1 or 1:30. Go back and then spend much of the afternoon is my major work focus. A lot of it's Zoom calls and Paloova-based stuff, but also still writing, the occasional blog post, and Sundays with Sisson, or a social media post or something like that. A lot of times I'll take a break around 6, go down to, I'm lucky that we have a spa in my building, so I can go down and take a jacuzzi or take a sauna. Not cold plunging much anymore. And then have dinner at 7:30, something like that, usually a big steak, and some sort of vegetable, glass of wine. And then I watch TV. I watch maybe 2 hours of episodic stuff with my wife. That's the time we get to sit on the sofa together and cuddle and watch TV, and then go to bed and get up in the morning and do it all over again.
Let's go. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Anything, Mark, that we haven't talked about today that you think is either fundamental or we just would be remiss if we didn't cover?
Well, I think, my latest focus on foot health and the fact that our feet are our connection with Earth. That's how we interact with our environment, and the idea that most people wear shoes that completely cut off that contact. So my reason for creating this new shoe company, Paloova, was to sort of re-educate people on the importance of having strong feet, balance, mobility, agility, resilience, and all of the things that make being able to move through this world effortlessly worth doing.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And what do you think that the core of that is, like, when it comes to strengthening the foot through your shoes or going barefoot?
So barefoot's best if you can go, but we surround ourselves with surfaces that are not conducive to going barefoot: concrete, pavement, wood floors, hardwood floors, tile, linoleum, glass. So I would say, what we did with Paloova was try to create a barefoot experience, so you can take these shoes onto concrete and walk 10 miles and feel like you're walking barefoot on a putting green.
Beautiful.
People are training in them. A lot of gym people who would normally go barefoot doing, say, lunges and squats and deadlifts, because you want to plant your feet. You want the big toe is what activates the glute, and if you scrunch the big toe into shoes like you're wearing, you can't activate the glute as well. Which is why so many people want to go barefoot in the gym when they're doing those things. Of course, most gyms don't allow it, so we have a lot of people, a lot of serious weightlifters who are wearing these in the gym. Trail runners doing hiking and walking and rucking, training their feet for their sport in these Paloova shoes, and then when it's time to race, putting on their actual racing shoes, their running shoes.
Yeah, that's a great balance there for runners.
Yeah,
is training in the barefoot minimalist, and then on race day, going with that more comfort.
Absolutely.
It's like the best of both
Train
worlds.
your feet, and then when you put on your running shoes, your feet will thank you for it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Mark Sisson, I appreciate you doing this today.
Thanks for having me.